Welcome to the Full Moon Film Buff, episode 70. We're going to talk about Howling II, Your Sister is a Werewolf from 1985. I watched this on Tubi. I had not seen this before. As always, we start by talking about the prominent crew and cast. The film was directed by Philip Mora, written by Robert Sarno and Gary Brandner, with effects makeup by Ellis Berman. While this is Philip Mora's first real werewolf movie, I did mention him recently regarding the werewolf-adjacent film The Beast Within from 1982. Mora is a French-born Australian filmmaker, author, and artist known for unconventional works across different media. He first gained recognition for directing documentaries, the controversial Swastika in 1973 and Brother Can You Spare a Dime in 1975. Mora directed movies such as the crime action film Mad Dog Morgan in 1976 or the psychological thriller Communion in 1989, showcasing an ability to tackle various genres. In addition to filmmaking, he published books on esoteric topics like the Gnostic Gospels, psychedelic therapy, and the rise of fascism. Mora's work is eccentric. We see his work again when we watch The Howling 3. I want to finish by mentioning he recently created a documentary celebrating the wartime activities of Christopher Lee, whom we'll talk about in a second, called Dracula Nazi Hunter, How I Learned to Love Christopher Lee and Drink Atomic Bombs in 2021. The cast includes the aforementioned Christopher Lee as Stefan Krosko. Annie McEnroe plays Jenny Templeton. Reb Brown is Ben White. Marcia A. Hunt is Marina. Sybil Danning plays Sturba. And Judd Omen is Vlad. Christopher Lee is a tour de force, a Renaissance man who donned as many robes as he did roles over his illustrious career. He might have lived the most interesting life of any artist I have ever covered or will cover as part of this project. Rest assured, I have to leave interesting stuff out. He was born in 1922 to a military family, and his early badassery involved being an intelligence analyst for the British RAF during World War II. After the war was officially over, he spent a couple years hunting Nazi war criminals. Lee was a cousin of Ian Fleming, the creator of James Bond. Lee was not the direct inspiration for the iconic 007 character, but his wartime background arguably influenced facets of Bond's character and Fleming's conception of him as a heroic, virile, but also pragmatic operative, described as tall, dark, and imposing. His stint as a real-life spy was a prelude to his incredible acting career. Lee embarked on his thespian journey in 1947's gothic romance, Corridor of Mirrors, and he didn't stop treading the boards and gracing the silver screen for 7 decades. His performance as the diabolical Count Dracula in the 1958 Hammer horror film launched him to genre superstardom. While solidifying himself as a horror icon, Lee showcased his incredible versatility in an array of other film roles, including the James Bond classic The Man with the Golden Gun in 1974, the Lord of the Rings trilogy as Saruman, and the Star Wars prequels as Count Dooku. He became the preeminent face and voice of noble villainy and sophisticated malevolence. Lee's commanding, lean, 6'5" frame and deep, aristocratic baritone voice made him the ideal fit to portray villains and monsters on the big screen. He reprised the famous vampire role 7 times for horror films and 3 times in other films, while also starring in other critically acclaimed horror movies such as The Mummy in 1959 and The Curse of Frankenstein in 1957, where he met one of his lifelong friends, Peter Cushing. He turned down the role of Dr. Barry Rumack, finally played by Leslie Nielsen, in the disaster spoof Airplane from 1980, a decision he later called a big mistake. I feel I ought to also mention Lee's personal favorite film, which he considers his best, The Wicker Man from 1973, in which he played Lord Summersisle. His prodigious output spanned nearly 300 movies and shows. But he was more than just an actor. Lee was a polymath in the truest sense, excelling as an operatically trained singer, releasing multiple heavy metal albums into his 90s, and being an incredibly erudite scholar fluent in multiple languages, English natively, Italian, French, German, Spanish, and Russian fluently, as well as conversational Swedish and Greek. His eclectic skill set and esoteric knowledge were emblematic of his enduring curiosity and passion for life. Despite all this, Lee was an incredibly humble, genteel soul off-screen who gave back immensely to academic institutions and charities close to his heart. He received countless honorary doctorates and accolades, yet always carried himself with a supreme grace and an impish twinkle in his eye. Christopher Lee passed away in 2015 at the age of 93, marking the end of a legendary life and acting career that spanned the classic age of Hollywood all the way through to the modern blockbuster era. His iconic performances, particularly His unforgettable portrayals of Dracula cemented his place as one of the most influential and recognizable figures in horror. An acting titan, decorated war veteran, and Renaissance man, he left an incomparable legacy. So now I have to talk about the rest of the cast. Annie McEnroe appeared in the classic 1988 film Beetlejuice. Reb Brown is a cult icon known for his roles in campy B movies and his impressive muscular physique. He rose to fame playing the title character in the 1970s Captain America films, which have become beloved for their over-the-top cheesiness, despite being critical failures. Brown capitalized on his cult status by starring in numerous low-budget action, sci-fi, and erotic films throughout the 80s and 90s. Marisha Hunt is a multi-talented model, singer, actress, writer, and poet. She first gained attention for her modeling and singing, and then she transitioned into acting, appearing in both cult films and dramatic roles for about 10 years. Hunt is an accomplished author and poet. Sybil Danning is a scene-chewing Austrian bombshell, exuding a powerful blend of vulnerability and va-va-va-boom. According to several online references, including her old personal webpage and a Playboy interview that's behind a paywall, her first major breakout role was as the lead character, Valerie, in the controversial 1980 erotic drama adventure film Chantal Comte's Bourg. But I can't verify anything about this film. Unless you can add solid info, take this with a grain of salt. Her performance and the film's sensationalized content established Danning's reputation as an erotic film star and sex symbol in the early 80s. From there, she shrewdly capitalized on her status as the reigning scream queen by starring in a bevy of schlocky yet utterly beloved B-movie horror sci-fi romps. Whether battling swamp monsters, escaping futuristic cyborg dystopias, or unleashing karate fury, Sybil embraced and celebrated the sexual nature of the roles. My favorite movie in her filmography is Battle Beyond the Stars, also from 1980. She has another werewolf connection. In 2007, Rob Zombie contributed a fake film trailer for Werewolf Women of the SS for inclusion in Robert Rodriguez and Quentin Tarantino's film Grindhouse. Sybil has a prominent role in this fictitious trailer. Finally, Judd Ullman's two standout pictures to me are Red Dawn in 1984 and Pee-wee's Big Adventure in 1985. Throughout the making of this movie, it seems the creators consistently pushed their boundaries, doubling down on outrageous and over-the-top approach. The result is a film brimming with energy, where the cast and crew embrace an anything-goes attitude aiming for maximum absurdity. This isn't a cerebral, highbrow artistic endeavor, but an unapologetic romp. It's not even good by the admission of most of the artists who made it, but if you're in the mood for some lighthearted, ridiculous fun, this movie delivers exactly that with its completely unrestrained spirit. I absolutely recommend it. There are a couple of interesting behind-the-scenes details worth mentioning. Firstly, reportedly Sybil Danning was getting a little tired of going topless or nude so often in her movies, so she wanted to stay clothed for this one. The producers disagreed. That's why they hired Sybil Danning. In the end, a compromise was reached where Danning would do a single topless shot. The producers made the most of that shot in a pretty petty way by showing it no less than 17 times during the ending credits, many of them just repeats on a loop. Unsurprisingly, Danning was angered by this decision when she saw the finished film. Secondly, in an interview around the time of the movie's release, the legendary actor Christopher Lee stated that his reason for accepting the role was that he had never appeared in a werewolf movie. And for this, I am eternally grateful. It gives me the chance to discuss this legendary horror and genre star. When Lee was later cast in Gremlins 2, The New Batch in 1990, he reportedly apologized to director Joe Dante, who had directed the original The Howling in 1981, for taking a part in this movie. So let's cover the synopsis. Christopher Lee reads from the Book of Revelations in a star field. Credits. Montana Sheriff Ben White attends the funeral of his sister, anchorwoman Karen White, the heroine of the first film. Following her interment in a mausoleum, Ben meets both Jenny Templeton, one of Karen's colleagues, and Stefan Krosko, a mystery man who tells him Karen isn't dead. Oh, and Karen, played by a whole new actress, is awake inside of her coffin. Krosko looks very out of place at a new wave punk club. Mariana, a lusty werewolf siren, lures four punks with extremely 80s hairdos into a werewolf ambush. Jenny convinces Ben to meet with Krosko. Krosko informs them Karen is a werewolf, and since the bullets that killed her were removed during the autopsy, she's going to revive. Krosko provides videotaped evidence of Karen's transformation. By the way, it is not the same footage from the first movie. Croscoe knows about Mariana and explains she's a special werewolf, immune to silver and only weak to titanium. Croscoe explains Sturba, the werewolf queen, has her 10,000th birthday soon. She will trigger the werewolf apocalypse. Ben is a hard sell on all this, but Jenny's a believer. Ben and Jenny arrive at the cemetery to stop Croscoe from desecrating Karen's body. Mariana and her minion Earl are there to stop Croscoe as well. Croscoe stops Karen from rising, while Ben goes all guns blazing and takes out Earl. Ben and Jenny decide to accompany Croscoe to Transylvania to battle Sturba. Mariana arrives first and meets up with some well-dressed werewolves. The pack picks up a road snack, two German hitchhikers. The werewolves have a kinky black leather S&M theme ritual at an old castle where they sacrifice a woman in a white dress to reinvigorate Sturba, who's gotten old and pretty wrinkly. Afterwards, she gets much hotter. Oh, and the pack is very much into polyamory and excess body hair. Arriving in the old country, Ben and crew almost fall into a werewolf trap. Twice. They wander through an ethnic folk festival, unaware that Sturba is nearby in her castle plotting their downfall. The locals are creepy, and the hotel staff are vampires, maybe? Ben and Jenny hook up, with no body hair, as God intended. Later, a dwarf, the film's word, not mine, named Vasily, leads Ben and Jenny to Croscoe, who introduces Ben and Jenny to several locals who are sworn to oppose Sturba due to the deaths of their various family members, all of whom were killed by Sturba or her followers. The group is on the lookout for Mariana, whom they hope will lead them to Sturba. Croscoe gives them holy medallions for protection. There's a little werewolf puppet show. Next day, Ben and Croscoe spot Mariana. That night, Ben and Vasily find Sturba's castle, but must flee after being spotted. Vasily is killed attempting to escape after he loses his holy earplugs. Sturba uses her red lightning powers to explode his eyes. Crazy. Ben barely escapes. Jenny's guard turns out to be a double agent werewolf. Jenny's captured and taken to Sturba's castle to serve as bait. Sturba uses Vasily's reanimated corpse to lure Croscoe into a trap, but Ben saves him at the last minute. Croscoe and Ben know Sturba has Jenny thanks to the medallion. Ben, Stefan, Constantine, Luca, and Father Florin arm up and assault the castle. The werewolf pack is having a big sex party. Our heroes are ambushed by Sturba's werewolves 3 times. Constantine and Luca are killed, and Father Florin is injured in the battles. Go figure that the 2 good guys who actually get guns aren't injured. Just saying. A lot of werewolves die. Arriving at the castle, the 3 survivors split up to locate Jenny and kill Sturba, which is an interesting plan. Ben rescues Jenny and flees the castle, killing Mariana and Vlad in the process. Ben guns down quite a few werewolves. Croscoe and Father Florin confront Sturba, who animates a demon. Sturba's demon kills Father Florin. Croscoe and Sturba have a light show battle. She implies they are siblings and or lovers? I'm not sure. The pair burns together while Croscoe quotes scripture. Sometime later, Ben and Jenny have returned to LA and are living as a couple. A trick-or-treater appears to be a child in a werewolf costume. After the child enters the apartment next door, they knock on that door. A Romanian man answers the door and claims he has no children and he lives alone. Declining his offer to come in for a drink, Ben and Jerry return to their apartment. Unfortunately, we don't get a show-stopping transformation in this movie. We get lots of little short clips of specific body parts changing in montages. It honestly felt like they were cut to be in a music video. Short, rapid impressions of a transformation without having to stage a full transformation. They are reused and remixed each time the multiple werewolves in the film transform. That said, the short clips we do get are very competently done. As far as the makeup jobs go, there are 2 fairly distinct looks. The first is the look Sturba, Mariana, and Vlad sport, essentially a long-haired furry human with enhanced eyebrow ridges, long fingernails, and fangs like a vampire, and or red or yellow eyes. There is a real attempt to keep these 3 werewolves sexually attractive, even while they are recognizably lycanthropes. Second, the werewolf shock troops, the unnamed batches. Honestly, these look a lot like shorter Sasquatch. They have noticeably longer and darker fur on their limbs. Because they're generic monster fodder, we don't get a good solid look at them, but they do their job just fine. The first thing I have to mention regarding Werewolf Lore is the introduction of titanium into it. I'll go into detail on this metal later, but this film sticks to the lore developed in The Howling. They shift at will, they're not tied to the moon phase. They do seem to stick to the 3-day resurrection period established in the original and add that removing the silver from the werewolf's body can allow them to revive, something borrowed from the El Hombre Lobo movies. This film also borrows the werewolf royalty concept, most clearly spelled out in Santo versus the She-Wolves from 1976. The first theme I want to talk about is punk equals werewolf. At 3 different points in the film, the Howling II contrasts the werewolves with punk gang members. After the funeral, Mariana hangs out at a punk club where she selects her prey, all while they think that they are hunting her. Later, the film cuts between the werewolf sex party antics and the punks partying at the club. Finally, at the end, the punk band plays their song intercut with werewolves. The film draws parallels between werewolves and punk rock subculture. Both punks and werewolves represent groups operating outside society, rebels shunned by the mainstream and driven by primal needs and desires. Both groups crave freedom from conformity and a release from the shackles of the status quo. Werewolves literalize this metaphor, embracing their feral instincts and shedding the thin veneer of humanity. Punks, too, shed conventional appearances and behaviors, rejecting societal norms with anti-establishment attitudes, androgynous fashion, and a raw, more primitive musical expression. Werewolves want to indulge predatory urges without restraint, while punks demand the right to fully express themselves without censorship or judgment. Both groups share an us versus them mentality, forming tight-knit packs, anarchic alternatives to what they perceive as a hypocritical, oppressive mainstream culture. However, this fierce independence also leaves both werewolves and punks potentially misunderstood and even vulnerable. Their alarming physical transformations, aggressive territoriality, and seeming lack of inhibition make them objects of fear, scorn, and violence from the public. The freedom from the straitjacket of civility comes at a price. They're rejected and outside the circle of societal protection. This cycle of rejection only fuels their resentment and destructive tendencies even further. Like all symbols, there comes a point where this metaphor breaks down. While some punks might engage in violent and criminal behavior, most just want to live life on their own terms and resist mindlessly conforming. Punks might derogatorily call regular people sheep to insult what they see as unquestioning obedience, but werewolves actually see humanity as a prey species, primarily fit to become mutton. Ultimately, films like The Howling II explore the duality of the human psyche through these two beloved Gothic and countercultural archetypes. The eternal struggle to coexist both our primal animalistic natures and our higher reasoning is embodied by the werewolf's curse. Meanwhile, the punk subculture explosion of the 70s and 80s represented a raw expression of that same conflict, the fight to reclaim individuality and authenticity through radically wolfing out against oppressive, civilized norms. In this light, both punks and werewolves can be seen as tragic anti-heroes, giving voice to darker, more honest parts of ourselves. So now I gotta talk about how absurd the inclusion of titanium is. Silver and titanium are two entirely different metals with different properties and uses. Here's a brief overview of their relationship. Silver is a precious metal, while titanium is a transition metal. They have different atomic structures and belong to different groups in the periodic table. Silver is relatively rare and more expensive than titanium. Silver is a highly conductive, malleable, and ductile metal with a shiny white grayish appearance. Titanium is a strong, lightweight, and corrosive-resistant material with a dull grayish appearance. Silver has uses in jewelry, silverware, electronics, and as an antimicrobial agent. We've talked about it before. Titanium is used in aerospace, medical implements, sports equipment, and various industrial applications due to its high strength to weight ratio and its corrosive resistance. In some cases, they may be used together in specialized alloys or applications where a combination of their properties is desired, such as certain types of medical implants or aerospace components, but typically they are alloyed with different metals. Silver is often alloyed with other metals like copper to improve its hardness and strength. Titanium is alloyed with elements like aluminum and vanadium to enhance its properties for specific purposes. Silver and titanium are both metals. However, their relationship is primarily based on their contrasting characteristics rather than direct similarities or overlaps in use. So why add titanium? I suspect just because it sounded modern. It sounds rarer. Unlike silver, nothing about titanium suggests it would effectively fight werewolves. Just stick to silver, keep it basic. So if you like lycanthropes, like, share, and subscribe. Contribute your thoughts and additional observations in the comments below. Let me know what I missed or what you noticed. Next, I plan on discussing Monster Dog from 1984. Keep your eye on the moon, a silver bullet in the chamber, and we'll see you back next episode.